Still looks like it's backwards, but we're starting to roll that.
This thing I think does normal. You're on Google Hangout and you're
It doesn't normally reverse it. I mean, I normally does Skype and everything that does.
Really? Yeah. And you're looking at your look makes you. Can you double check it again?
Hello, welcome. There's seats up the front here. All right, I think we're going to get started. So has everybody sent a text message to that telephone number? Gotten a response? It should be asking you what's your name, and then it should be asking you what's your email address. And later today, or maybe let's be more realistic, on the weekend, we'll be sending you links to the slides that we'll be going through for this session, but also for all the sessions today. So welcome everyone. I see a few people typing, so I'm going to just wait for you to finish. No, your cell phones. Your phones. I don't want to distract. I've told people to do something, and then I need to give them some time to do it.
My second text is going through it
No. Well, if you've got one text in the system, that's fine. Go for it. If you're still
name.
Yes.
And you also want email address.
Just respond to each prompt as it goes.
When it goes.
Yeah. It'll and if it all goes into my database, and I'll just shuffle through. If there's any missing information, I'll just send you a text and clarify. So, all right. So, my name is Ethan. I am the president of Campaign Gears. We're an organization that helps nonprofit and progressive groups campaign more effectively. You are at Digital Skills for Movement Building, being presented by Campaign Gears and Organizing 2.0. Organizing 2.0 is an organization from New York that is, how would you describe Organizing 2.0, Charles?
We were founded to address the challenge of groups that do not do online organizing well, but should because they support labor organizations and working class people.
So that's actually a much more refined version of what Campaign Gears is, basically. Just our focus is trauma. We should mention that today's session is sponsored by 3 organizations: Unifor, Nation Builder, and the Waterloo Regional Labor Council. Unifor is the labor union, of which a number of us in the room are members because we're part of the Canadian Freelancers Union. Nation Builder is the community organizing platform. It's a software package from California. We're having a session with them later this afternoon. And the Waterloo Regional Labor Council actually supports what we're doing here to the point that they don't have any members who are actually able to come to the forum, but they still wanted to contribute by helping to pay for this project. Earlier today we had Wild Run Productions help us with a video session. And yeah, so those are the groups that are involved today. Our agenda is, well, it has several points on it. We'll try to get through all of them. We'll see how far we get, but it's stacked in order of priority, so we'll definitely do that. So we're going to talk about some introductions. We're going to talk about why digital campaigning is different than other kinds of campaigning, the traditional kinds of campaigning. Then we'll start with websites, email lists, Facebook, and Twitter. And you'll notice that those are ordered in priority. So we'll talk more about why that is the priority in my opinion, but they are ordered in priority. So the description of this workshop was that your organization is just starting or is kind of small. So what we're going to talk about today is how to try to figure out how to make your organization seem like it's bigger. Right? It's shadow boxing, right? We're trying to figure out how to make your organization seem legitimate. I've done a very large amount of door-to-door canvassing, and I've seen a shift in the 20 years that I've been doing canvassing. From now, it used to be people would just take your leaflet and that was that. Now, I'm almost certain that if I have a good conversation on the door, those people are going online afterwards and checking me out. And if I don't have a website or don't have a digital presence, everything I just spent the 20 minutes talking to them about has been completely discounted. So this workshop is really aiming to help your organization get to the point where if you have that kind of good conversation with someone, when they go and check you out, it's not negated by your lack of a digital presence. So we're helping to also validate your work to your supporters to make sure that they get to see the parts that they're not necessarily involved in and get to feel like they're involved. And we'll answer your questions. We'll try to keep an eye on the clock, make sure that we, feel free to pop up and stick up your hand and say your question as we go. But I'm also going to try to make sure I have a question period at the end. So, as I said earlier, I am the president of Campaign Gears, and I'm also a member of the Canadian Freelancers Union. And I'm also a certified nation builder expert. We're not going to talk about nation builder right now. But what I'm really is an organizer. I've spent 10 years organizing with the labor movement. I was the national organizing director for Workers United until I decided to go and form Campaign Gears. And so I really look at, I also happen to be a bit of a geek, which is why I do this kind of stuff. But really this technological question, this digital organizing question is not a technological one. It's an organizing question. How do you use the best tools to achieve your organizing goals? So today's workshop is really trying to focus on what organizing you're doing and less on push this button, use this service, and that sort of thing. So I would like to learn a little bit about you folks. We don't really have enough time to oh, look, I've got 22 new email messages from everybody sending their text messages. Great. So we don't really have time to go through the circle, unfortunately, but I'm hoping that maybe folks can raise their hands so I get a sense of who's in the room. Can I ask how many of you are already involved in the digital work in your organizations? Everybody raise your hand if you are. Okay. So you're getting started, at least. How many of you have just started doing digital organizing for your groups? Okay, all right. And how many of you have been doing it for a really long time? Nobody. Okay, you've been more involved than most. How many of you have a Facebook account that you actively use? Okay, and the people who don't, what sense of activity? You know, it's
once a week.
Once a week, sure, that's close to active. I mean, I'm on my Facebook 24/7, but I'm obsessive, so that's okay. How many of you have a Twitter account and use it? Keep in mind, the operative word is use it. There are millions of Twitter account users that are out there that just have an account. They're just sitting empty. One of those is me, in fact. Yes?
I have one that's linked to my Facebook account. So every time I post on Facebook, it actually automatically goes to my Twitter feed. So then I'm just not having to think about it anymore.
Okay. During the questions, I'll tell you why that's a bad idea.
Okay, fair enough. Great.
How many people have, and you may not run it because this tends to be sort of centralized in just one person, but how many of you are in organizations that have an active email list, of email broadcast system? Okay. And how many of you are doing that work of producing it? Yeah. So.
Should we raise our hands for between organizations, but we've done some of this?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, and then how many people are planning to go to the rest of the workshops today that we're doing in this room? Do you know that today is a a full day of workshops on digital organizing in this room. After this, there's a session that's for more intermediate topics around digital organizing. And then after that is a session on using the Nation Builder platform, which I've mentioned previously, which is a community organizing platform. And then, someone with a calendar? It's 2:45, or whenever the 2 o'clock session starts.
2:45.
2:45, yeah.
Here.
And then, yeah, all these workshops are all here in this room. And then the last session of the day is talking about, it's social media helps us build movements that are swiftly destroyed, is the title. And it's going to be talking about hashtag activism and some of its weaknesses and some of its strengths. So, why is digital different? Does anybody want to throw out some suggestions for why digital is different?
Different than what?
Different than traditional organizing, sorry.
Interactive.
It's interactive, yes.
Quicker.
Sorry?
It's quicker.
Quicker, yeah, instantaneous, yeah.
I was also saying you can do a lot of stuff. You can basically compute, you can do a lot of different kind of things for yourself.
You can do a lot of things with just 1 or 2 people.
Customizable, like you can have this, specific message that you can disseminate rather than having.
Targeted
Targeted,
messages,
yes.
yeah, for sure. Okay.
And it's reaching people with what they're already doing.
Right, reaching them where they're at, yeah.
But you're in this really competitive idea
Mm-hmm.
space.
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely instantaneous audience feedback. Something that a geek like me, but really someone who's, I've been organizing for a really long time, and when I started, I felt like organizing and those organizers around me quite often had to deal with situations where we were saying, okay, for this campaign we're going to try this. And you had to wait until the end of the campaign to learn whether it was going to work. You had to wait all the way to the end of when the ballots were in the box. Oh, maybe we think that tool or that tactic or that message resulted in better results than otherwise. But with that instantaneous feedback, you can do that on the fly, changing of your campaign, looking at the data that you're getting from these tools, and adjust your campaign as you go. And that's a really significant change in the way campaigns work. You can pivot mid-campaign. If your data is telling you that the current way you're doing things is heading you off in the wrong direction, use that data to turn and go in a different way. You can also run experiments. This kind of technology allows for you to be able to try a certain message with one little group of people, see if it works, and then use it in a larger group. And that kind of technology, that kind of feedback used to be the only thing that you could do if you're like a big television company or something. And now it's at our fingertips all the time, and it can help us really improve our campaigns as we go. So we can make data-driven decisions in real time in our campaigns. So that's a clip from the X-Files. Does anybody remember the X-Files? Frankly, the biggest thing is that people use data when you're in a small group situation and you're not big enough to have like 1 million members or something. Your potential supporters and your supporters use your digital strategy as a way of verifying that they can trust you. People look to make sure that you exist online, to make sure that you're legitimate. If you've just shown up at their door, you're not trying to scam them or something. Let me catch up here. My slides. So that means having current content on all of the channels that you've decided to do. And current content can mean different things. On Twitter, it means like the last couple of hours. On Facebook, it means the last couple of days. Other platforms on your website, it can be like the last couple of weeks. But if your content is old, that's a bad indicator of how legitimate you are. So focusing on the content and on the organizing rather than the tools is really an important message from today. So that's a post that you're seeing there. And that is my image for an acronym that I want you all to remember, which is POST. When you're talking about technology and you're talking about your digital strategy, you should really start with your people. Don't jump all the way to the end of the technology. Talk about your people. What do they actually have the capacity to do? We were just, before the session started, I was talking with a fellow here who's working with more recently immigrated refugees and people into Canada. Focusing on Facebook and Twitter might not be a very good strategy for them because they don't have access to those tools. Talking about text messaging, which might be a better tool for that. So you got to start with your people, and that people is both the people who you're trying to organize and the people who are actually doing the organizing. If your group is made up of people who are just not very technically savvy, there's no point in investing a huge amount of time in all sorts of deep tools if the rest of the organizers on your team are not going to pick them up. So you got to address the people question first. You also need to talk about your objectives, because your objectives should be leading this situation, your choices when it comes to these kinds of technologies, and your strategy as well. And then the very last is the technology. So it's really important to let the people and the organizational goals lead your technological choices. I find a lot of people are like, oh, I read this article this morning. It said that Twitter is the hot new thing. It's a little old school, but that was probably like 2009 when those articles came out. But you shouldn't just be doing these kind of things because it's the hot new thing. You should be doing them because the objectives and strategy of your organization say that you need to do them. So let your organization and your people lead the way to your technological choices.
Yeah.
Can anybody raise? Anyone heard of the term message discipline? Yeah. So when you're talking about these technologies, you're talking about communication streams, and being that in the old school of like broadcaster model, you had one authority who would speak and then broadcast out to the population. It was very easy to control your message discipline because that one person was the only one who talked, and so they were usually an elected person or otherwise like top of the hierarchical graph. And in our new system here, everyone's participating in this, and that's a good thing. It's a more democratic way of doing things, and it increases the amount of ownership that all of your supporters and your staff and anybody who's involved in your project has. It does mean that your message discipline, meaning people can start talking off in different directions without any control. So you need to establish as a group that you're all going to talk in a similar way. So there are three things that you can do to help you with that. One is to understand that you are not your audience. You are passionate and involved, and you care about your issue. Your audience, in other words, the people who you haven't reached out to yet, don't know a thing about it. They probably don't understand it. You got to think about these issues from their point of view. So make sure that you don't get stuck in the land of facts and massive amounts of information. You got to think about it from their point of view. What do they need to know? And it's probably something very short and small because they don't have a huge amount of time for this. The other thing is that you got to be consistent. You probably suck up these kinds of information. It's common for activists to be like all over a particular issue or topic, and you just suck up every piece of information about this. But the average person isn't as involved as you are. You got to think about saying the same message to them over and over and over again. You think about the advertising industry. They say that you have to see the same ad 6 times before the message really gets in. And that's for like accessible concepts like buy this thing, it'll make you feel better. That we've all been programmed for a long time to suck in, right? So for concepts like social justice or changing the way the world works, probably it's going to take even more times than that because it's so foreign to the common discourse. So you really have to repeat, repeat, repeat. So this is that's the big theory concepts of the session. So I'm going to just pause for a moment and ask if there's any questions about that stuff. Yeah.
I guess sometimes you do things in the schedule number one. Sometimes I know sometimes you get pinned books too, like with the blog or things like, but I think that's not, I guess it's not a question. Just different ways of repeating, I guess.
Yeah, if there's a key message that you want every person who comes to your website to be able to see, I would say you have to separate the concept of message from context. Message is not necessarily the words that you've written down. They're the thought or idea that you're trying to transmit to people. Your content should always be new, but it's hitting the same message over and over and over again. And so in different ways, with different stories to wrap around it. But it's always the same message. You don't want to change your message very frequently because you won't have hit people with the repetition to have delivered it the first time enough. Right? So now, are there any other questions about the sort of, yeah?
Maybe addressing this, but I'm just wondering, one of the things that I find is I'm often preaching to the converted. And are you going to maybe talk about how to get beyond that a little bit?
Yeah. So the plan for the 2 workshops is that this workshop is more reactive. You made contact with someone else, and you've inspired them for some reason to check you out. And so these are all the things that you're going to need to deal with that. The next session is going to be a bit more about using digital tools to reach out to people and bring them in. So next session might be better to talk about that. But any other questions before we move on to the website, Facebook, email, nothing else? Okay. So the next topic is websites. And the reason I start with this is because your website is the most important part of your digital strategy. It's not the hot, cool, sexy thing right now, like social media is, but it's really the place to start. And the reason for that is because you own it. All these other platforms, you're at the mercy of those organizations. Like Facebook is very well known for deleting Facebook groups of union locals, of any, oh yeah, if they don't, it's very much a tactic of the right wing to complain to the corporate owners of social media platforms to get groups shut down. And if you don't own your group, then you're at their mercy. So you got to make sure that you build an infrastructure that you own yourself. And the website, your domain name is the first key part of that. If you own, I used to work for a union that actually lost its domain name. And I'll tell you, it was pounced on by domain name scavengers, and they blackmailed the union into paying money to get it back because they directed the domain name at a porn site. So they paid off or else. Now the attitude of the union I was in was kind of, fuck you. They were not much inclined to push around like that. But still, it was an international union, 250,000 members across North America. And we had to change our domain name on everything. So your domain name is incredibly important. When you're talking about your website, really it's just a home base. It's just a place to start. It's not a place to get.
I just want to reinforce, a lot of times with new organizations, the actual owner of the domain name is like a board member or volunteer or some tech guy someone knows. And I just want to say, that's not good enough. Like, you actually need to make sure that a legal entity owns that domain name and it is not subject to someone getting your identity hacked or deciding that they hate you because you support the wrong people. Like, watch out.
Yep.
Can I ask, how do you buy, what do you recommend as a mechanism for buying a domain name? Because there's so many options out there and it's hard to tell if you're new to that process or if you just have been waiting for it for a couple of years and everything's changed.
Yeah. I'm not going to get into that very much because it's a very technical thing, but except to say that it doesn't really matter. They're all pretty much equivalent. When it comes to the domain name, like the action is you select your name, you put in your credit card information, and a year later you need to do it again.
Yeah.
That is
Okay,
the
so you can
basics
never actually
of.
own the domain name forever. You're always
No. You are owning it for a period of time, which is usually a year. I think you can do up to 10 years. Depends on what kind of domain name you're talking about. But yeah.
Can I just say, just as a tip that I ran into, is that we got our internet service provider to register our name, and it's for our domain, and it's been nothing but trouble because they are no longer our internet service provider, and they're the registrar. So now that I have other domain names, I'm doing it on my own.
Yeah.
But at the time, it seemed like a reasonable thing, like you take care of that.
It's like I see Dick over here. Dick and I met back when we were in the Mobilization for Global Justice in 2001. And that organization was the key organization for organizing in Toronto for about 3 years. It was the place for everything that was happening in that city. And all it was a domain name and an email list. It didn't have any offices, no staff, no nothing. That was all it was. You can have a very powerful group as long as you get your domain name and your contact list of people who are supporters. That is an organization. That's all you need. So it's important to have strong control of those two assets. Oh, there we
How
go.
do you do that? How do you own your domain?
You purchase it from a domain name registrar.
Anybody?
Yeah, it's between $5 to $15 a year. So, but it is a legal transaction that's regulated. There's no doubt if you purchase that domain name, it's yours. Unlike if you set up a Facebook page, there's still questions about whether that's yours.
But there's somewhere you kind of have to like go through you can't put your own content in there, you have to get them to do it for you.
Yeah. So let's if people have questions about domain names, I'm happy to talk about it over lunch, but it can get a little tricky. So, but the basic concept is actually pretty simple and important. So on your website, you need to think. A lot of folks feel like you have to have a huge website with all these different things. For a small organization just getting started, just focus on something simple, something that has the ability to update content on a regular basis, but don't overdo it. You don't need to spend days and days and days on your website. You really just need to put down the basics about what your group is doing, why, and then contact information for follow-up. That's really all you're doing when you're doing website. If your organization is bigger, you have staff, then yeah, sure, you're going to start producing more content and add more to your website. But, if you can, try to produce your content in video format. We just did a workshop this morning about how to work with videos using your smartphone. It's not impossible. It's much easier than it has been in the past to produce that kind of content. But videos take up by people, the compelling aspect of video is so much stronger than the most glorious essay you've ever written will be outshadowed by a decently well-done video. So try to think about doing short, easy-to-do videos as your content. So I have some campaigns in the municipal election who were asking me about this, and I suggested to them, and they found it quite useful, to just have the candidate talk into the camera for a couple of minutes every day. It's incredible, like they're doing that all the time, they don't have to do any prep. Boom, you're done, you have video on your website, you have fresh content, it's all about the candidate, it works really easy, and it doesn't require any particular amount of work.
Do we have access to your last session on a smartphone?
That session we won't have access to. It's from all the sessions from now until the end of the day. We'll send you the slides. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Let's see here. So there's a lot more I could say about websites, but I have an eye on the clock, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on it. But your website is your home base, so it is a place to at least have business card worthy information on it, with a little bit of like who you are and why people would care about you. Once people have come to your website, an important thing to have on there is to have them to sign up to your email list. And notice I did not say come and like you on Facebook. I said sign up to your email list. Because again, you can own your email list. If you probably have to pay someone to help you get the mail to those addresses, but you at least have that data. It's yours. If everything blows up in the world, you can still have your database of your email addresses and move it somewhere else, use a different provider, whatnot, but it's yours. That is your organization, your home base, and your list of people who support you. I thought I saw a hand here. No? Okay.
Can I just ask, do you need something, a database function within your website in order to collect those email addresses? It's kind of like, because there's these templates, and that's confused me in the past.
You can do it. There's all sorts of different ways to do it. With an email list, these days, you really need to have an email provider that will send your messages for you. A popular one is MailChimp. Another one that my clients use is Nation Builder. There are a couple of others, Constant Contact, but basically they take care of the act of sending mail to help you get through the spam filters and deliverability and all those kind of topics that get really arcane and really complicated. But it's important to use a tool like that. Some people, I've had clients who were using just their Excel and Outlook to mail merge. Do not do that. Move away from that. You are destroying your email reputation if you're doing that. You are hurting yourself more than you would if you just didn't send any mail. Yeah.
What about, one, what about MailChimp, and two, what about spam filters? Are there, do you know if there's a platform that is better at getting into people's mailboxes, especially people who are in large institutions, than another one?
So all the mail platforms all claim to be better than all the other ones. The thing about, first of all, spam filters don't matter as much as they used to. What matters is interaction. All the major platforms like Google, like Gmail and Yahoo Mail and Hotmail, they're all paying more attention to, okay, we're receiving this message from sender X, but receivers, 20% of the receivers are just not opening their messages ever. So we're going to downgrade the priority of delivering sender X's mail. So focusing more on making sure that you're sending to people who actually want to get your stuff and getting them to respond is more important than worrying about the arcane world of spam filters. Yeah.
Just a few tips. How many of you are thinking about these email lists for an actual organization with members? So just a tip, try not to use the work addresses of those people unless what you're doing is directly related to their job. So if you're a union and you see that your email addresses are full of people using their work email accounts, you should be aware that the employer can actually block those or read those. So don't do that. Another thing is, there's an issue for membership organizations where you feel like everyone owes you to get your emails, and the relationship is like, well, I'm going to send it, and you're going to read it. And I think that pushes away the idea of what's been explained here, that actually engagement is something you have to earn and it matters. So there's like a little organizational thing where you have to understand that like your 50,000 or 1,000 organizational email addresses of members, they don't necessarily pay any attention to your emails ever unless you earn it. And once the organization gets that, it changes the dynamic of how they're sending emails and thinking about deliverability. No one owes you to see your email or your subject line in their inbox, ever. So you have to fight, and that might mean over time that an organization with members will actually remove email addresses from its own list because that person is never responsive on email. Even though that person is a member, it still pays dues and whatever. That's how important it is. It's not about your list size, it's about what you're talking about, your engagement level. And more, here's the thing, more people will see your email after you get rid of the worst performing 20%.
There's, I see your hand, but to just add to that, so like I hear from a lot of my clients, oh, our members, they never read our email because they're too busy. So let me ask you this. How many of you ignore mail from your parents because you're too busy? No, you prioritize the people and issues that are important to you. They're compelling. So the question isn't, oh, they're too busy to read our email. It's, why aren't you producing content that people want to read? Right? You need to think about what is it that is going to be of interest to the people you're sending to. And if you're sending mail to people who aren't interested in what you hear and what you're saying, then you shouldn't be sending it to them. You should be finding ways to be interesting, or refining your list to the people who are actually wanting to engage with you, both because that's just good organizing principles, but also because you will hurt your email list for the rest of your people if you don't do that, because these email providers, they treat your lists as a group. And if you've got this group of people who aren't participating, they'll be hurting your whole list. Yes? You had your hand up at the back, right?
As a developing organization, my objective is not to find people who might be interested in my message. It is to generate interest among people about my message or issue. So how do you do that? In other words, everybody at a traditional model or model of natural development, conscientization, etc.
So, I mean, what I would say is that you're trying to find people who are interested in your issue. Like, sorry, I didn't quite follow the question. Yeah?
I'm going to try and help. So I think what you described is what marketing people call inbound marketing. The idea that you have something out there on the web so attractive that people will actively chase after it because it's compelling to them, like a cat video.
Right, for whatever reason.
So there's like specific things that will help you with inbound marketing. An example is offer something of value. Like if you send out, you know, hey, learn how to defeat the boss at work, right? You know, special webinar. Then people for whom that's an important topic might actually sign up for your webinar, and that's how you know that the system's working. Another is get a celebrity or VIP to publicly mention it on another platform. Another way is to, in-person events, like let's say this was 300 people at a conference, is have the moderator say, oh, and my friend's cat video was so funny, and it's on the URL, catvideo.com. In other words, think about like, when you're attracted to stuff, where you see that taking place, and then try and translate that to the specific issue or niche that you're in, and try and replicate that sort of method. The problem is that it's really hard, and will probably fail most of the time. So whatever that strategy is, you have to do it a bunch of times, and hope it works every once in a while. It's definitely not going to work every time you try it.
So Charles, since you can't be seen by the camera, you want to sit over here? Question over here.
Oh, very quickly. I use the groups who send me stuff as a news source. So if I know a group is going to say, we love the environment, I won't read that. But if they say there have been this many oil spills in the last 3 months, I'll read that, and I know which ones give me that content.
Right.
I don't
So
want generalization.
email is not a great platform for disseminating information.
Oh,
Because,
they're my news source.
right, but are you clicking on those emails?
Oh,
Okay.
the ones that give me it.
The thing is getting people to interact, and interact means click. And go to a website, do something. As long as the people you're sending to are clicking on something, doing something, then you're okay. The trouble is if you're interacting with your email subscribers in a passive way, like we're just going to send them stuff and never ask them to do anything, never say, come to our website and read this article, you are killing your email list. Even if it's the best, most interesting stuff in the world, if they don't click on something, you're going to have some trouble. So to get people to click on stuff, keeping in mind that the average email list engagement rate is between 20 and 40%. If you're doing 40% in your email list, you're doing pretty good. So that means 60% of your people never open your mail. Right? So just keep that in mind when you're sending mail. Okay? So the first thing to think about is what the from line is. Right? When people are scanning through their email box, they're seeing, people read from left to right, so they need to see a name here that's something that's interesting to them. And there's a big debate about whether that should be a human, an actual person's name, or your organizational name. Studies have shown that people will click on real people names far higher than they will on organizational names. You'll notice if any of you are on the NDP, federal NDP email list, the emails always come from somebody. It's either a member of parliament, a member of staff. The trouble with that, especially in unions, is who's the name? It can get a little dicey. There's a political question. Is it the leadership? Is it staff? Like in the Ontario, in the federal NDP, they use staff people's names, which in the labor movement would be really strange. So it's a question that you have to figure out. If you can't answer the question of whose name it would be, then the default would be to go to the organizational name. But do understand that by doing that, you're going to take a hit. People are going to click on your emails less. So that's something to consider. Then the next thing is, and this is funny because I've worked with a lot of clients who've spent hours and hours drafting their email and all the pretty pictures and da-da-da-da. And then I'm like, what's the subject line? Subject line? Subject line is the most important part of your email. If you don't have a good subject line, the rest of it doesn't matter because they don't open it. They don't see all the pretty pictures. So you've got to make sure that your subject line is something interesting and compelling. And in fact, there's a rule out there called the 25 rule, which is that for every piece of content you make, you generate 25 subject lines. And the argument is, if you make 25 subject lines, you force yourself to get through the boring junk. To get to 25, you have to come up with something interesting and creative by the end of that process. So it's something to consider is that subject line is the most important part, and you need to try to get the boring stuff out of the way.
So you write 25 and you pick the best one?
Yeah, you write 25 and you pick the best one. Usually the most interesting one will be near the bottom because you'll have gotten out of your box and into more interesting topics.
How important is it to use searchable tools, or do you want to be sort of? I like to be really clear in my subject line, usually because I'm sending information to people and I want them to know what that information is and I want them to be able to find it later if they need to look it up. But I know on clickbait, they're often saying, this is amazing and astounding, but they don't tell you what it is. What is the data showing is actually more effective for real organizing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a very debatable topic. So first thing I would say is that everybody's list is different. And rather than having me say, well, you should do blah, 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 focus on your list. Try it a couple of times. Like, if you've always done it, newsletter number 5, newsletter number 6, try doing something different. And then look at if you're using a proper email deliverable tool like MailChimp or Nation Builder, you'll get statistics about who's actually reading your mail. Use those statistics to drive your decisions, like we were talking about earlier, right? And those data will always be unique to your particular set of people, because some groups respond to that better than others. So I would also encourage you though to be experimental, to try new things. Organizations can be quite conservative, but you need to push back against that. Try a new tactic, follow the data, see if it works, and if it does, try it again in a different way, and use the data to help you make those kinds of decisions. Upworthy showed that clickbait titles work until Facebook changes the algorithm, and then your profits go through the floor. So yeah, your subject line, your from line is really the most important thing. The next thing is that emails need to be short. And I know that there's some folks who have like long newsletters that are miles and miles long. Keep in mind the vast majority of emails read on a phone And a lot of it's read in like uncomfortable situations, like on the bus or going on the subway to work. They are going to read about 10 seconds of your mail. And if your mail takes 5 minutes to read, you've just wasted 4 minutes and 50 seconds because they're not reading any of it. And you can, if you have a proper email platform, they'll tell you which links are getting clicked on. And it's a good thing to do is to have links scattered through your mail. If you don't believe me on this, and you feel like there's some need to do it, you can scatter links through your message, and you'll see that people are only clicking on the links that are up near the top of your messages. They're not getting to the bottom. They're never getting there. So experiment with your length. It's far better to be emailing people frequently than emailing them giant essays. And I know that people are always scared, oh my goodness, I can't send too much mail, people are unsubscribing. Keep in mind, the Obama campaign sends mail every single day, and they're still doing it, and he's not running for re-election. So, it's been proven that you can send mail to people, and in fact, it's been proven that you can send mail, and this is, if you're on the NDP email list, it's been proven you can send mail asking for money over and over. I mean, there were times during the provincial election in Ontario where they were sending 4 or 5 messages a day asking for money.
So, just on that.
Yeah.
It's effective because now do get money.
No.
But it's a smaller percentage. I'm involved with the NDP. On the grassroots side, people get turned off.
Well, I would say that some people get turned off.
Yeah.
You need to watch your stats. You need to watch your data. That make these kind of decisions. Don't take the assumptions, oh, well, people are going to unsubscribe from our list if we send too frequently for a given. Just do it a few times and see what happens. If the stats start dropping like crazy, then obviously you need to go in a different direction. But the reason that campaigns like the Obama campaign and the NDP are willing to do these things out is because they're studying their stats. They do an experiment, see what happens, and they figure out that NDP supporters are actually okay with being spammed with requests for donations 5 times a day. It drove me completely crazy, but
You have to be careful to do only one change at a time, though, right?
yeah, you do need a list that's big enough that you can get a statistical relevancy. So you do need to be careful about that. But yeah.
Now I can't raise my hand, but you can see it. Just a few quick things. So all of us have people on our list who you might call high information voters, and then a much larger number of people who are called low information voters. The high information voters want to debate policy with you, and they have things to say about that email you sent. The low information voters are ignoring you much of the time, and then every once in a while they see you and they're like, oh, they need my help, I'll do something. So it might work to think about how you separate those two things out. There's a capacity issue, but just recognize the people that are pushing back on stuff are often the high information voters who want to be treated special, and they're not representative of whether your list is working or not for raising money or getting stuff done or turn out for events. So that's one piece. And then, which you, by the never say this to the high information voters. They will accuse you of something. The second piece is, it's true that mass emails are often getting really low rates even when they raise money, and it's a problem. So you have to think about, there's things you can do that will work much better, but that take way more effort. I think people think emails, oh, I'll just do an email, 10 minutes, check it, half an hour. It's like, no, an email program is an intense amount of effort. For example, if you send out 5 emails to your 5 major metropolitan areas, and the subject line says, Dear Toronto voters, we need you. Right? Then people in Toronto will open and look at that at much higher rates than they will if you sent that one email to the entire membership list. And if you think about that in terms of units within the union, or think about it in terms of people who care about issue A or issue B, everything you do to sort of respond to a person where they're at is going to increase your open and click rates and all that stuff. But it takes an enormous amount of time to do it. So just sort of think about, is it worth doing? Often it's not. But if it is worth doing, then it might be worth having an extra person or an extra time to do it so that you get what you want out of it.
All right, yes?
About 5 years ago, I used to manage a community sort of clearinghouse email list letting people in that very local community know what was going on from a number of different organizations. And at first I was sending out an email for everything that someone would forward to me and say, please send this to your membership. But I was getting so much feedback from people saying this is too much that I created a digest instead, where I would sort of every week send out, this is what's going on next week, or this is what's going on this month, and this is what you should be watching out for that you can get involved in the community. And people liked that a lot better. And even after I moved away from that town, they're still using that kind of format. So, but maybe people's email uses and habits have changed since then, and people are more able to sort through a lot of separate messages.
Yeah. I think that I think email has changed. I think it's a rapidly evolving field. I also think that your list, let your list lead, right? So if you have the capacity to segment your list out into different chunks, like the people who only respond to single issue emails that are every single day, then generate content for those people, and then the people who only like digests, send them a digest. That's a lot of work. You have to balance all this stuff between the response rates you're getting for things and how much capacity your group actually has. But let your list lead your decisions. If you start doing daily emails and everybody starts hitting that unsubscribe button, then back off and go back to the digest. But give it a try. See what happens. Maybe your list has changed in terms of who's on it, and they would prefer that now. But I'm not going to say a general rule, do X. I'm going to say these are the things you should consider and use your list to tell you what you should do. Yes?
Could you say something about the requirements to prove consent for sending emails?
Yeah. So Canadian law has changed just recently. The Castle law has come into effect, which means that you have to have explicit consent from people that you're sending mail to. Now, there's a lot of debate about this because it only applies to commercial emails. And so first of all, if you're a union, your members are not engaged in a commercial activity with you. They're membership, and so you can contact them as much as you want, with or without their consent. I would say that it gets a little tricky when you do things like, oh, I'm going to sell tickets to the Labor Day barbecue, and I'm going to talk about that, or I'm going to sell T-shirts. When you talk about selling something, that's when Castle comes around. If your organization never, ever, ever plans to ever sell anything, then don't worry about it. It's not important at all. But if you don't worry about it from the beginning, then you've limited your options. If you ever want to do a fundraiser or anything where people are going to buy something or pay for a service, Castle will apply. And so,
crowdfunding?
Sorry?
Would that include like crowdfunding issues?
I would say the crowdfunding, yeah, probably. I mean, it depends. Crowdfunding is just a tactic for how to pay for something. So if you're using crowdfunding to pay for T-shirts for Labor Day, then I would say that heads off into the land of commercial activity. I would also say that this law has been accused of being incredibly confusing. And I've seen all sorts of reports from lawyers giving their opinion on it, and some of them conflict with each other. So, yeah, Chris?
I think most of the signups that we've done already have consent built in, right?
But
like
that's not true, because the consent has to be opt-in, not opt-out.
Okay, so
And that's a key thing, which is that a lot of web platforms default to have the little checkbox checked.
Right.
That is actually against the law in Canada. It has to be unchecked, and then you have to have the person check it. That's actually an issue that Nation Builder is struggling with right now. But
does Nation Builder send like follow-up emails, like click this button to really sign up? Is that the?
There are strategies around it, but you know, platforms that are built in the U.S. are going to have that problem because they haven't quite figured out that the law is different in Canada. So it is something to look into. Now, if you're a small and building social justice group, your commercial activity is probably pretty small. So I'm not going to belabor this point too much, but if you do think in the future you're going to be doing some commercial activities, it is something that you should consider. And obviously, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't offer legal advice, but it is something to pay attention to. and something that's being shuffled out. You've got 3 years to check in with your email list that you already have. So I wouldn't panic about having to do this in a rush, but it is something to pay attention to. There were a couple other questions before I answered that one. They go away? Okay, cool. So let's talk about Facebook. Are any other questions about email?
You said there's 3 years until it goes into effect.
The law is in effect now. If you already have your email list and you didn't do the really clear consent, you can have 3 years from now to reach out to them to get that clear consent. But from last July 1st, you should be getting clear consent on all your signups. Yeah.
What does it mean? Exactly what gets counted? If I download an email, is that counted as reading it? If I open the email, does it have to stay open for a certain amount of time?
Oh, okay. Right. So email is, if you just read a text email, the person who sent it can't tell if you read it or not. The key thing is that email has to have something in it that makes the server that it was sent from do something. And so that's like, if there's a picture in the email, that picture's not in the email. It's on the server. And when you open up the email, the software goes to the server and grabs that picture and then displays it to you. The other thing is if you click on a link that takes you to that server. So any of that sort of looking at a picture or by clicking on links, that's what gets counted on the other system. And so it used to be actually kind of hard to get statistics because so many Canadians have BlackBerries. The old school BlackBerries didn't show pictures by default. And so when you sent to those addresses, they just disappeared. You never had any feedback from them unless you got them to actually do something. So that's how open rates work. But I wouldn't focus too much on open rates. Open rates are kind of a passive thing, and they're not very exact because of what I just discussed. I would focus on actions. What actions have you prompted people to do because they've been reading your email? Have you prompted them to sign up to an event? Have you prompted them to get to donate to the group, to come out, to do something, and use that data because it's much more clear. It'll be lower. You will get less. There's a drop-off in each of these stages. Not everyone will read it. Not everyone will open it. Not everyone will read it. Not everyone will take action. But action is ultimately what we're trying to get people to do, right? So that's what really matters to measure. Yeah.
We use Salsa, and it actually does show you when people just open the email. So I'm not sure after what you just said that it's.
Well, they show you for the people who are viewing pictures. You have to view, if people have pictures turned off, that will not work.
But we don't have pictures in all right now, so we have links. Tells us specifically which.
So what it does is it does have a picture in it. It's a 1 pixel picture hidden down in the bottom of the code.
Okay.
It is using that same technology that I described.
Okay.
But it's a bit of a hack to get around to make sure that you get those stats. But even those stats, there are people who are reading your mail who you are not getting reports on. So don't believe the dire numbers that you're getting as much. It used to be much higher because everybody in Canada had BlackBerries, but that seems to be shifting somewhat.
I have a picture. Whether it is an attachment or whether it is actually pasted on the email, is that the same thing?
Well, okay, that's a good question. Do not send attachment emails. Sorry, if you're sending out to a large group of people, do not attach something to that email. You will get nailed for spamming. Include a link. Include the picture with a link to your server. Yeah, in most online email management programs won't let you attach something. They won't do it. So, and if you're sending from your personal email client to a large group of people, don't do that. That goes back to the point where I say use a proper email platform. MailChimp is free for lists under 2,000. It's a decent option for smaller groups. So if you have a list of 100, go and use MailChimp. Do not just send it from your own personal email account. You're not being very frank.
The mail what?
MailChimp.
MailChimp. Oh yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to move on because we're running out of time. But if there are other questions about email, we can chat after the session, I guess. So let's talk about Facebook. As I've mentioned already, Facebook you do run the risk of the fact that you don't own it, so you're at the whim of the corporate master. The thing about Facebook is that Facebook has changed a fair bit in the last 2 years. They went public recently, right? And so they are much more focused on creating profit than they used to be. Does everybody know what I mean when I say a Facebook page when you talk about your organization? Anybody not clear on that? So it's not your personal profile, it's a page for your group. And it used to be, when they first came out with this concept, that it was like, just like an email list. Anybody who had liked your page would get the content you created. That is no longer true. It used to be last year, about 20% would have gotten it, but now it's actually down to about 1%. So they have figured out that they can't do stuff for free anymore. They got to get people to pay. And so the concept of using your Facebook fan page to just put stuff out is not as easy as it used to be. So we'll talk more about this in the next session, but it's important to not just be like, okay, oh, well, I posted it on Facebook, so everybody's heard about it. You need to do more than that. You need to really work with your supporters to make sure that they're engaging with your content. It's just like email. You got to have that engagement.
So the more people like a specific post that you come put from your Facebook page, the more they'll get stuff from you?
Yeah, so we'll talk more about this in the next session, but there was a study done by the Wall Street Journal where someone liked everything that showed up on their feed for like 24 hours. And then they went through all the different groups that they had liked, companies, brands, groups, that sort of thing. And they figured out that even though they were liking absolutely everything, they still weren't seeing about 2/3, 3/4 of the content that these groups were all generating. So there's they were being shown about 300 posts out of at least 1,500 posts that were being generated by all the groups that they had established a relationship with. So there's a whole lot of content out there that's being produced that just look, and it's just not being seen by the people who are involved. The way to get it seen is to get people to interact with it. If people like it, as you said, if people share it, it's even better. You got to think about what's your organization's supporters interested in engaging with. What do they really like? So you can sort of cheat this a little bit if your group, especially if your group is small, and you have like a cadre of involved people. And this is a trouble. A lot of small groups that have staff, it's like they probably help write the Facebook post, right? So they think they already know about it. They don't need to engage with it. But they do need to engage with it. Everybody in the organization needs to engage with your content on Facebook, even if they help write it. They need to share it. They need to comment on it. They need to engage with it as much as they can, and that helps boost it up to their lists. So that's really important to try and focus on. Boosting posts. We're going to talk more about advertising in the next session. The assumption is a small group won't have the money to do that on a frequent basis. So really, if you don't have the money to pay to get your posts out there, you really need to focus on content that people are going to want to engage with, and then getting your activists to engage with it with a conscientious, I need to conscientiously engage with this, help it spread. Thinking about the content that people engage with, and Facebook prioritizes things. And so they'll prioritize video that's posted on Facebook first, and then pictures, and then text posts, and then links to other sites. So that's part of this morning we were talking about YouTube and how posting. Yeah, I'm going to go through each part here. So from the bottom, we were in the session this morning, we were talking about how the difference between posting a video onto Facebook and posting a video onto YouTube and then posting a link to Facebook, right? So the difference is that Facebook, people engage with video far more than any other kind of content. Facebook just sucks up that video. They're even taken to like auto playing the video now, right? So if you post the video directly to Facebook, that's at the top of the pile. If you post it to YouTube and then post a link, think about what you're doing there. You're encouraging people to go off the Facebook platform, and Facebook can't advertise them anymore. And so they downplay those links. So the links are at the bottom. They don't want people going out of their ecosystem. They want everybody to sit there and suck up the dating profile ads and whatever, the junk that they put inside. So it's really important that if you're going to do video, and you should because it's the most engaging content, to upload it straight to the platforms that you're trying to engage people with. So like Facebook, upload there. If you're trying to find people on YouTube, upload there. Yes?
Can you just watch the YouTube videos on the Facebook page though?
But it's still bouncing you off.
They won't prioritize that post. Facebook will prioritize a post that has a video that you upload to Facebook far more than they'll prioritize a post that has a YouTube itself.
So you upload it. Yes?
Just a few comments about it. One of the things a lot of groups do is they put up boring crap on Facebook, and then they try and get their friends to help promote it in order to game the system, which means that more people will see your boring crap. That is not good. You don't want that. You actually need a system to figure out whether you're pushing something because it serves your organizational self-interest, which is nice, but not compelling, or whether it's something that's actually compelling and therefore you want as many people as possible to see it. And only if it is the second category, then it's worth using back-channel methods like emails or whatnot to get people to help game the system in order to get it promoted more and more. And if that content really is compelling, then the difference between YouTube and Facebook will be somewhat reduced. And your YouTube post will indeed spread and it will be seen by others. But you have to try really hard to push back against pressure to simply post something like your boss making a toast at the Christmas party. It's not that interesting. And
Yeah, that's a very good point, which leads to the next point, which is think about what the action is on Facebook. You can like something. You can share something. So it's a bit of a problem that the corporate master there has defined the paradigm as everything has to always be positive, right? Like you can't. It's hard to say that I like the exploitation of garment workers, right? Like, so think about the content you're producing, and think about how the exploitation of garment workers should be framed in, and here is a group of garment workers who are unionizing and fighting back. That's something I can like. So think about how you frame your content into that sort of positive, something that someone can support kind of method. You will get higher share rates with that. It doesn't break the paradigm of what people are doing when they're looking at Facebook, right? So let's see here. But yes, as Charles said, really the focus has got to be on the content. And all these things, content is king. Content's got to be good. It's got to be interesting. There are some people who say that the rule is you should be posting on Facebook every day, once a day. If your organization has got enough capacity to produce quality content every day, then that's a good goal. But if you are posting crap 5 times out of 7, then you shouldn't be doing that. Yes?
Can you please explain a little bit when you said they prioritize the videos? What does it mean? How will they prioritize that?
So when you're reading your Facebook feed, you're not seeing everything that the groups that you have liked are posting. You're seeing about 1/3, maybe a half if you're lucky. And they use an algorithm, which is a very complicated algorithm that they keep private, so you don't ever really know exactly what the algorithm is. But it certainly prioritizes stuff that people are engaging with. One little hack that people have found that I've been playing with lately is that they prioritize posts with the words "congratulations" in them, because they're trying to do this whole logging people's life changes stuff. And so if you get married, what do people do? They all pile on and say "congratulations, congratulations." And so that post will be seen by practically everybody that's associated with that person, because it's got the word "congratulations" in the comments. So it's that kind of alchemy that they're doing in the background that they won't tell anybody exactly what it is, but someone noticed that that's true. And I'm sure as soon as that gets spread out more, they'll change it so it's not true anymore. Because they're trying to stop people from gaming the system. But they do say very clearly, produce good content that people want to engage with, and you will get up higher on the list. And so the focus has really got to be on making stuff that's interesting and that your supporters are going to want to make a comment about, or
1/3 of the people see.
hold on, one question. What time is the session over?
I don't know. So the next one's at 1.
Yeah, next one's around 12:30.
Oh,
You want to have some.
fair enough. Okay. Good point. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Yeah. So as I said, we weren't going to get through the whole thing. Anything else about Facebook? No.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You said there was a hierarchy video. So just briefly, what was that hierarchy?
Hierarchies, videos at the top,
Yep.
pictures,
Yep.
then text, then links to sites that are outside of Facebook. So something that can be really quite compelling is video can be hard for people to produce. Produce good pictures, and in the descriptions, put a link to your website, and you'll get up high as long as your picture is interesting. And you'll still have the ability to have people come to your website. So that's a good tactic. So really, I put Twitter at the bottom of the list because, frankly, you have to compare. Facebook has a billion subscribers. Twitter is about 500 million. So keep that in mind. And a large number of the accounts on Twitter are actually not active. So Facebook is really, your website's the first priority, your email's the next, your Facebook page is, and if you still have time, get on Twitter. It's a good place for trying to reach out to media contacts, if you're trying to get media coverage of your stuff. The chattering classes love Twitter, but my hope and the way I organize is that we're not talking to the chattering classes all the time. We're trying to talk to the people who aren't in the political sphere. We're trying to expand our reach, right? So Twitter is sort of lower on the list for me in that regard. So I'm going to just flow into the fact that you need to have a database, and we'll talk about in the Nation Builder session more about databases. So really ensure that you have a system to keep track of everything. And if you want to get the slides from today, send a text message to that telephone number, and you will get slides. So is it the next session really at 1:15? Wow. So I'll answer more questions, but feel free to get off the session and go to your next session.
Hire more consultants to help you.
What?
Yeah.